Welcome to Poetry Today. I'm Lois Barr. I'll be the host, and I'm a professor of Spanish at Lake Forest College. I teach all things Spanish as well as creative writing in Spanish. I write poetry and fiction, and people often ask me, how do I stay fresh? How do I improve? And so one of my secrets is my writing group. And this is my writing group here today, and I'd like to introduce them. This is Kathy Dorman, and she's a colleague at Lake Forest College. She's a professor of psychology and environmental studies. And Kathy has published in Calyx magazine, in anthologies, and she was nominated for Illinois Poet Laureate and was a finalist in the Gwendolyn Brooks Open Mic Contest. You'll see some of the work that she's done is collaborative writing with an artist. Karen Gordon, born in Denmark, she's a professional translator and interpreter. She's a very gifted textile designer, and her poems have appeared in Sow's Ear, Snowy Egret, and East on Central. And Catherine Hahn, also at Lake Forest College, professor of French. She has chaired modern languages. She's published in Christian Science Monitor, East on Central. Her first book of poetry, Outside, Inside Out, was published by Finishing Line Press. And it's about taking care of aging parents and about the grieving process. Her second book, Coïncidence, is from Alfabar Press, and it'll be out soon in French and English. And she'll talk a little bit more about that when she talks about the whole collaborative process. So I thought we would share some of our secrets about our writing group, who we are, and how we've stayed together. So Kathy, do you want to tell a little bit about the history of the group? Because I'm kind of a newcomer. So if you could tell a little bit about how the group started.
Well, we have a name for ourselves. We call ourselves the Knollwood Group, Knoll, Knollwood, in honor of the street where we first met. We met at a grand old house at the end of Knollwood Road in Lake Forest, right on Middle Fork, Savannah. This was about 10 years ago. At the beginning, there were other writers present, but over time, as often happens, it filtered down to the four of us, and we began meeting in each other's homes. We are grateful to our founding hostess and companion writer, Paula Preschlack, who gave us woods for the summer and a fire in the winter and a steady supply of tea. Karen will tell more about what we do, but I'll give you a little overview of this. We meet monthly, and we take turns leading each other, and we lead in various ways with prompts, with themes. Sometimes we focus on craft or on a genre, and we read very widely of other poets. Robert Frost, Seamus Heaney, Vera Pavlova, Gregory Corso, Elizabeth Bishop. We try to read very widely in those sessions. And we take cues from strolling outside in the garden and sitting by the fire. We have fun. We take great joy from writing with each other, commenting on each other's work, criticizing each other, in good and helpful spirit. We have actually a collection of poems from the four of us. It's called What Is There to Do But This, which comes from a poem in the collection. And What Is There to Do But This is really a title that has to do with why we write. And so if you were to ask us why we write, we would say that it's essential to us, despite all of our other activities. In work and community and family, writing is essential, and it's our way of connecting to nature and to each other.
Yeah, and so will you want to talk a little bit about some of the people who have left and
Well, by name, well, David Sweet was with us. He's the editor of Weekend North Shore.
Mm-hmm.
And our hostess, Paula.
Paula, if you're out there,
And
Paula, come back, we miss you.
The others, I think, are kind of lost to history. My friend Lucy Wire was with us for a while, and I'll be talking a little bit about her later. She makes handmade, she's a bookmaker, among other things, so she makes handmade books. And so those three are the ones that come to mind.
Okay, great. Karen is going to tell about the process and what we go through when we're writing together and how we go about having our sessions.
The advantage of writing in a group is we inspire each other, and we also feel obliged to write in between. So it's a way to keep us going, which is very important. And as Kathy said, we meet in each other's homes, and there's an intimacy about going into someone else's house. The things they have, their gardens, the art on the wall, the pictures. We get inspiration from all that. We take turns leading, and some of the themes is we have had the flaneur, we've had the Old Testament, which came up with hilarious stories, which may not be a good way to talk about the Old Testament. And we had siblings, and then it jogs your memory. Oh, yeah, I had a similar story or incident that I remember. So it inspires us incredibly. And we had birthstones, which I'll never forget. We bring supporting text to the theme, and we will do a little bit of introduction of what we have in mind and what we are aiming at, and read something, and then we'll have a short exercise, and we will read that aloud if we feel it's worthwhile reading aloud, and the rest of the group will say, I love that line. You might not need that. If you add such and such, that's it. And sometimes we come out with a poem, at the beginning of a poem, that we can very easily work on and feel, oh yes, I'll send this one out. And the themes get our thought process and our imagination in higher gear, which is really good. And it wakes up our own memory. And it people ask me, is it therapeutic to write? And I say, no, it's not therapeutic, but it's cathartic. I think writing answers questions we didn't know we had. And I first began writing poetry when I went to a retrospective exhibit at the New Tate in London by Francis Bacon. And I thought, I'm going to hear about all these bloody paintings he has of body parts and then the screaming Pope. But he said, I love poetry because it says a lot in very few words. And I thought, that's it. I have lived and worked in many languages, but I've never had the chance to write in all these languages. So when I came to America, I thought, yes, that's it, Francis Bacon. I have enough words for poetry. And that's how I started.
You have great words for poetry. You really do. What do you think would be one of your favorite exercises that we've done together as a group?
Our favorite exercises? I love when Kathy comes in with grammar and texture. And I love ones that Cindy brought in. We should try and use words that sort of in this sentiment of the poem.
To the voice of the poem.
Yes.
So to try and go with the voice that's coming through in the poem.
Yeah, the emotions that are coming through.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Cynthia is going to talk a little bit about the collaborative process and not just within our group, but also in a wider sense.
Yeah, I think I could add to what Karen has said about how much the group enriches each other as we write. At least from my perspective, my writing has stretched so tremendously. You talk about this voice that you're developing. I've developed multiple voices as a writer as a result of doing the exercises in this group, because of what you bring in, what we all bring in, whether it's haiku or it's flash fiction, the formal aspects that we're studying, the sound of the words, or the themes that you bring up. And as you say, one story will lead to another story, and we can feed off each other's life experience. We're all seasoned writers. We've also had a lot of life experience between us. And I find that our voices collaborate in the construction of pieces in a very enriching way. And it has inspired me to actually take this beyond the group and work on a collaboration with an artist friend of mine and create a new text which will be out this fall called Coïncidence. The title stems from or coincidences. It's a coincidence that she and I happen to find a resonance in each other's work. And it's a co-instance, a bringing together of art, visual art, and the written word. And because I teach French and my mind is continually translating myself, I decided that each of the poems in this text would also have two voices. So they're all in French and in English, and they have the additional context of the visual art. And so if you can see it, for instance, she will draw a lot of birds. She has a realistic component to her visual work, and then the abstract context brings it out further and connects to an emotional landscape that I'm trying to convey in a poem. And so I'd like to give you a sample of that, if I can, and read one of the poems from the text. It's called Seasonal Resonance, Résonance saisonnière, and it's a back and forth between English and French throughout the poem and throughout the seasons. 1. These garden daffodils shun the night. Brighter than Japanese lanterns, an intense spring moves them like stars. I see them strolling after sunset. Ces jonquilles jardinières défient la nuit. Plus lumineuses que des lanternes japonaises, un printemps insensé les déplace comme des étoiles. Je les vois ambuler, la nuit couchée. 2. Summer thrums round my ears. Cicada brushes the night wind. I am lifted to purple plum. L'été résonne en tapotant mes oreilles. La cigale brosse le vent du soir. Je suis transportée au prunier empourpré. 3. A burning dusk falls red to the earth. I sweep to find my burrow. Une crépuscule en brûlant rouge tombe au sol. Je balaye pour découvrir mon terrier. 4. Wordless white over pine, the moon arcs this night's whispering stars. En blanc sans parole sur le pain, la lune décrit un arc dans cette nuit aux étoiles chuchotantes. So I'm excited about this new collaboration coming out and this openness I have now to continuing the collaboration beyond our group.
Wonderful, wonderful. Did any of the images come before the poems?
Yes, in fact, the poems in this text are span a good number of years and life experience, but same token, the artist herself. This is a sort of a retrospective of her work. She's not creating as much now as she has in the past, and so we pulled things from her whole career as an artist. So,
Wonderful, wonderful. I can't wait to
yeah.
get my copy.
Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to say that as a group, yesterday I mailed in another collaboration that we did, which is to a journal called Sow's Ear, and we sent in a collection of our poetry. Mm. And if the audience is interested in places that are interested in collaboration, Sow's Ear is one. It does a community of poets section. And Mixitini Matrix is another. It's an online journal. And so there are places in print media and on the web where you can send in collaborations. And then I think, we've talked about the prompts and everything, and sometimes what we write doesn't work out as a prompt, but I've had a lot of luck, and this Zona de Carga, loading zone, is a trilingual. It's in Brazilian and Spanish and English, and we did a session dedicated to still life at Cynthia's house, and she has a wonderful Cézanne painting of beets on her wall, and those Cézanne's beets, Las Remolachas de Cézanne, came into my poem, and then they also won the Poetry That Moves contest. They were, for the month of May, they were on the buses on the North Shore, Highland Park Poetry's contest. So sometimes what we do in these sessions just practically comes right off the page and is almost ready to go out there. So I thought now it would be really nice to hear some more poetry from each of our poets. And so, Kathy, I'd like you to tell a little bit about which one show your collaborative vision. Great.
So this was a collaboration not with writers but with artists. This book is called Collaborative Vision, the Poetic Dialogue Project. And this project is the brainchild of Beth Shader, who lives in Deerfield. And she pairs up poets and visual artists and puts together an exhibit based on that. And so the book, as it comes out, has the art and the poetry that was together. And this exhibit traveled and had its debut at the Cultural Center. I think this was 2009. And I was paired with a print artist from Michigan. And what I like about what I wrote for this project, these are called the Pandora Memos. And they're prose poems, but in the form of a memo. I worked with a couple other women on these very same memos. This is a photo of a painting that a painter named Leslie Wu, who lives on Vashon Island, Washington, did a series of paintings in response to these memos. And another artist, Lucy Wire from Lake Bluff, now Minneapolis, put these together in handmade books. So I like it that these memo poems, I call them, have been finding their way in the world. The story of the Pandora Memos really comes from my long-term interest in retelling the story of Pandora, which is a mistranslation. Pandora's box is a mistranslation. It's actually a phrase I don't like very much. I don't ever want to say Pandora's box around me. And there's a series of memos, but I'm going to just read you two of them. And so the first one is from Pandora herself. It's to Erasmus, who was the 15th century writer who did the mistranslation. And it goes like this: to Erasmus from Pandora regarding mistranslation. It has come to my attention that you have translated my biography, that unauthorized bit of theodicy, from Hesiod. Unfortunately, you have compounded his errors with one of your own, confusing Pithos, my great storage jar, with Pixis, meaning box. Now we have dreadful Pandora's box, circulating about history, tarnishing my reputation, branding me into eternity. More than you might imagine, Pixis lives, spreads like a virus, misinforms multitudes. I request correction and apology. So there you know this now. That there was never Pandora's box. It was always Pandora's vase. And there's a second memo from Eve to Erasmus. So other people, fictional and real, wrote memos to Erasmus about this same problem. And Eve and Pandora are kind of the same figure mythologically, conflated. So here goes Eve. To Erasmus, from Eve, on behalf of Pandora. When it comes to mythical inversions and bad raps, Pandora's got company. There are old stories about me, too, you know. Nobody hears them these days, but the Gnostics had it right. The snake and I, we were buddies. He was the instructor, sometimes my lover, sometimes my helper. Sometimes he just watched me being me, the original know-it-all. If you had an inkling, and I suspect you do, of what I really know about matter and time and desire, you might be tempted to bring me down. Still, if you aren't afraid to look deeply into those places where, like Will said, there are tongues in trees, books in running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything, you'll find me. Pandora, too. We'll make you a cup of tea. We'll talk.
Okay.
I can start with those
Great.
two.
Those are great. Thanks, Kathy. So, when we're collaborating, sometimes we're surprised by very emotional memories. And I think a poem that resonates with me very deeply, I'd like to ask Karen to read a poem that comes out of a childhood memory. So maybe you'll set it up for us, Karen, and
Yes.
explain a little bit about Elsa.
I grew up in Denmark during World War II, and we were occupied by the Germans. So I basically lost my childhood. And how do you say I lost my childhood? I put it in the story of a pig we had. Elsa. The day I turned 5, the village ran out of food. They came for my pig Elsa, marched her with sticks to the hill outside town where they used to burn witches, tied her trotters wide to a ladder, hung her upside down. My pig squealed louder than Jesus and didn't know how to forgive. The butcher opened a vein in her neck, red sprayed his glasses. Under her corkscrew tail, he stuck a knife in the pucker, sliced through her bladder and navel, between the beaded tits, pulled out when he reached the folded chin, and wiped the blade on his apron. For blood sausage casing, he scraped the intestines with the back of the knife. Liver, heart, and kidney pulsed in a bowl like newly hatched birds. They lowered my pig, placed her on a bench, scalded her, shaved her bald with cow horns, sharpened on the stone by the smithy. In dreams, I return when the crowd has left and the butcher is in the tavern. I find her in a buzz of flies as a raven lifts off with her eyes. I break the sticks that beat her, undo the ropes that tied her upside down, fall to my knees, smother her snout with kisses, curl up inside her, pull her flesh around me. But the butcher returns, slices my pig into cutlets and roasts, throws the rest in a vat of brine. Her tail pierces the surface like a cry.
Wow.
Yeah. Elsa is a poem that I see.
Yeah.
It's so visual,
Yeah.
and it's, I feel that poem every time you read it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
I didn't know. I thought this would really tell the experience of what it's like to lose a childhood, better than just I lost my childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I do have one poem that's about the process of writing together,
Oh,
and it's called Timed Free Writing on a Screen Porch, and this was on Cynthia's porch. And this was right after my mother had died, and we were working on still life, so I
Yeah.
did bring a bust of Mozart and some other. You'll hear about all of it in the poem.
On the table.
Timed free writing on a screen porch. The timer is ticking away, Mom. I know it rang for you, but what about me? Now no one says, oh, honey, that's just lovely. 4 of us scribble at a round glass table. I brought Mozart, a plastic bust. Cynthia made a braided challah. Kathy brought a blue ceramic colander made by an artist named Apple. Karen brought peaches. The peaches are a bit wrinkly, but against young green bamboo, their bright colors show beauty and decay. We decompose to the ticking kitchen timer. Young Amadeus, whose music you played, may request a slower tempo. The wind hums a lullaby you sang to me, sung by your daughter's daughter to her daughter, and maybe her daughter will sing it to her one day. So come, while there's still some challah, float over this table the way you always hovered in the kitchen. So,
Terrific.
I'd like, Cynthia, if you have a short poem
I
that
have
you could read.
a very short one to end,
Okay.
perhaps, and I can show the beautiful illustration by Monique Loubet, the artist that goes along with it in the text. It's called Solstice. Blue smoothing the ending day's light, waves of soft wash roll out and beach. Sea sleep drowns to an azure cool. In drinking whispers, it sips the night winter. Solstice. Bleu lissant la lumière de fin de journée, des vagues en lave douce se déferlent en plage. Un sommeil de mer se noie à la fraîcheur d'azur. Il se boit en chuchotant, sirotant l'hiver nocturne. Thank you.
Yes. So, I want to thank the guests, and I want to thank Gilda Lessler and Senior Cable. I want to thank Highland Park Poetry and Jennifer Dotson for asking me to host this show. Next show of Poetry Today will feature a book by a haiku teacher who's very popular. It's called Haiku in Senryu, and it's by Charlotte DiGregorio. And she's in our Deerfield Library Poets group. And we also will be talking about my book, which is coming out,
Yes.
Biopoesis, which is coming out at Poetica. So thank you all, and keep writing poetry.
Thank you, Lois.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.